Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, my name's Sandra Macdonald. I am the National Driver Training Manager for Pertemps. My background is as driver training. I specialise particularly in driver behaviour. I've got an MSc from Cranfield, but I'm also doing my doctorate at Loughborough University. So that's really where my background comes from. So just to tell you a little bit in terms of who Pertemps are. Pertemps is a national company. We've got approximately 100 branches nationwide. Head office is based in Coventry. As it says, we are the largest supplier of temporary drivers in the UK. We are currently placing around about 7,500 drivers into the logistics industry on a weekly basis, either on a payroll or on a self-employed basis. So you can see it's obviously a massive operation in that sense. Established in 1961 primarily as a recruitment company, and they've still obviously got their background in that, which is really what those agencies and those offices are doing for us. And within the Pertemps brand, if you like, there are 160 companies within that, specialising in all sectors, not just obviously in transport. I'm obviously in the driving division itself and the driver training side of things, but it covers the medical, it covers the police training, emergency response, all those types of things. We've obviously got a very broad base. And as we said, 7,500 drivers on our payroll on a weekly basis. So what I want to look at really is actually what the problem is out there. We know there's a shortage of drivers out there in the UK in terms of obviously the logistics side of things. That has gone to top level. It's not a secret. It's gone obviously up to ministerial level. Lord Ahmed very recently has been quite vocal in what he's got to say, obviously, in trying to sort of support the industry and actually see what can be done, not just from the grassroots level, but actually perhaps from a policy basis as well. In terms of the drivers, what we do know is there is approximately 299,000 working HGV or LGV drivers out there currently. Now that's based on numbers from the National Statistics Office, but what we can also do is pull those numbers from certainly looking at things like driver CPC, so those who are actually qualified to go out and actually do that driving itself. What we also know is that there is a shortage of about 45,000 drivers currently out there in the UK. That 45,000, it's a very, if you like, very simple sum that they've come up with. What they've said is, okay, well, DVSA and what was VOSA, if you like, and DVLA, they've got approximately 45,000 trucks registered on their books, but we've only got 299,000 drivers. So they're saying, obviously, there's an awful lot of trucks sitting around, perhaps, idle. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're literally short of drivers, but that's a very simplified version of how they've come up with that figure. But what we also know is that there are 80,000 drivers in inverted commas out there, so people who actually hold the category on their licence but are currently not using it, and we can tell that again from things like CPC records. There is obviously, as we said, there's a big shortage, and we'll look at the numbers in a moment. But it's really about looking at how we can tap into those 80,000 drivers. There must be a reason as to why they perhaps hold the category, but they've chosen obviously not to use it perhaps as part of their work or part of their career. What we also know, and obviously, again, it's common knowledge, is it is an ageing industry. Certainly something that was found when CPC for the LGV industry was introduced in September 2009. A lot of drivers said, well, actually, do you know what, I'm not going to do it. I can't be bothered. It's an expense. I don't need it. And they decided to perhaps take early retirement and not pursue it. So obviously they fall out of that category, maybe falling now part of that 80,000. In terms of the age and sort of the age side of things, what we do know, and these are figures from the FTA, that 4% of drivers who are working are currently over 65. So clearly we're going to lose those in a fairly short period of time. But 47% of drivers are actually over 50. So what that says to us is there are a lot of drivers perhaps now thinking, do we want to renew it? Do we want to pay for the medicals or the cost of the CPC every 5 years? And how do we perhaps then start to attract drivers into the industry coming in from the bottom level? Because obviously in maybe 5 or even 10 years' time, the UK, which relies very, very heavily on its logistics side, those drivers are going to fall out of the market, and we need something very quickly to replace them. We've got to do something very early in this sort of problem. In terms of new drivers coming through, only 7% of drivers are under 30 and only 1% are under 25. So we're really not attracting these drivers into the industry at all. Maybe they don't think it's a chosen career path, maybe that it's money, and we'll look at those shortly, but we really need to look at this big problem, but start looking at it very, very early on, and that's something that we've tried to do. Now, obviously, in terms of recruiting those drivers, it's all very well recruiting them, but what we actually need to do is retain them as well. There was a survey very recently, it was an online survey by an organisation called returnloads.net, and they found that a lot of the drivers were coming back and saying, well, okay, it's about poor pay, I don't like the facilities, I don't like perhaps the companies I'm working for. And they also found that 76% of drivers would not recommend being an HGV driver as a career to somebody else. So we really have this problem both internally and perhaps marketing on an external basis as well. As we said, some of the things they've come back with is actually the poor pay. They don't think it's a well-paid industry, and in some cases, I probably agree it's probably not. They feel undervalued, perhaps either by the recruitment companies, maybe by their agencies, and perhaps by the companies themselves. And we need to look at why that is actually happening. And certainly that's something that we've done in terms of Pertemps, which I'll cover in a second. But also there's a very poor image perhaps related to this industry as well. It's a very stereotypical industry, and I hate to say it, but it is. If you ask people about, describe your standard LGV driver, they're probably going to describe them as perhaps male and maybe the over 50s, which is, that's the reality of the industry. And people, maybe we're not attracting perhaps female drivers into this, for example. So what are we doing in terms of Pertemps? As it says, we're training drivers through training engagement. By asking the drivers what they want, what we have found is that actually they're saying, do you know what, we want some trucks that are half decent. So what we've done is we've invested in a training academy. We have a purpose-built academy based over at Crick in Northampton. We're using a site over there. And we've got several state-of-the-art, brand new Cat C and C plus E vehicles, which some of you may have seen our C plus E vehicle at the back of the room there, just on the entrance to the main auditorium. That's one of our training vehicles, and we've just invested in a whole load more, which are going to be rolled out over hopefully the next 12 months as well. What we've also got, as we said, and there's one of our trucks obviously there in terms of training, moving away from stereotypes of age and gender. As we said, there is this massive marketing problem, if you like, whether it's in company, whether it's been a long-standing problem. So I'm actually trying to tackle that, and what we're trying to do is say, well, actually, because this is a male world and we're not maybe attracting perhaps female drivers in, there's no reason why they can't do it, is saying, well, actually, have you as a company got facilities to be able to accommodate that? And perhaps, very often they haven't, so maybe getting the companies to look at it from a slightly different angle as well. And this is a long-term problem. It's not something we're going to solve overnight, but we need to obviously start somewhere. What we got to do is also invest in the future as well. And what we're doing in terms of looking at getting drivers in, we've started a partnership in the last probably 15, 18 months now. We work very closely, first of all, with the MOD. We've got a partnership with them in the sense that if they have servicemen and women who are looking to leave those armed forces, obviously very often they will have their HGV, LGV licenses, but they haven't got experience in the commercial world. So what we'll do is we'll have them into our academy, we'll put them on a 2-day driving assessment and actually prepare them for what is a very busy world out there. It's a commercial world. So actually, rather than just being, perhaps a little bit cocooned in the armed services, is saying, well, okay, let's get you ready. And then once you've gone through our 2-day assessment, what we can do is place you directly into companies. Because we've got a shortage, we can place them straight into the jobs. What we also do is we have people come through our branches. As I said, we've got a nationwide coverage. So if drivers come through and they're perhaps looking to come into this industry, if the branch thinks that they're suitable candidates, what we can do is we can have them over to our academy, and we will actually, as a company, we will pay for their licence acquisition. So they can walk away, obviously, with their Class 2, as it was, or their C plus E, and we can actually get them through, get them upskilled in terms of licence acquisition. Now, very often for insurance purposes, you need 180 days out there in terms of experience, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. What we will do is we'll put them through that 2-day assessment once they've passed their test, and we will place them straight into a company at no expense to themselves in terms of their licence acquisition, which some of you know is probably several thousand pounds. Obviously, by doing that, what we can do is we will guarantee them a job for 2 years, and we'll guarantee them 40 hours a week. So it's a very attractive package. If they decide to leave early, then what we'll do is we'll pro-rata that cost down as part of their contract, but everything is obviously up front to them. So we're trying to work very hard with it, as we said, trying to get these drivers in. What we're also doing is marketing in terms of saying, well, okay, look, we need to perhaps encourage these drivers. We're working with mentoring groups, so getting young drivers through, also perhaps female drivers through as well. We've signed up, or we work very closely with some road safety organisations. I work very closely with an organisation called AIRSO, which is looking at road transport and road safety. So we're pushing, obviously, the Pertemps side of things and trying to get people more knowledgeable, if you like, about the problem that is fast creeping up in terms of these drivers leaving because of the age side of things. So we're working very hard with that. What we do in terms of the career prospects as well is we have recently worked with TV companies. We've just produced, or we're in the process of producing, a program with Sky, which is addressing this particular issue in its own right. What we're also doing, and I work again very closely with the DIA, so the Driving Instructors Association, and also with the DVSA. I've been sitting in on some meetings looking at how we can say, well, okay, look, it's all very well us getting these drivers through or trying to get them through, but if they can't actually access a test because there's a shortage of driver tests, then what can we do to address that? DVSA are very active or very proactive. They have recently recruited 60 commercial vehicle examiners, and what they're going to do is hopefully fast track those, and they should be rolled out in the summer. So, we can provide the drivers, but we can't expand as a business if we can't actually get the tests in the first place. So we're trying to tackle it, not just from the grassroots level, but actually going right to the top and obviously sitting in on these meetings as well. What we also need to do in terms of career prospects is actually get these young drivers, or these potential young drivers, actually to see that there is a career path out there. Having spoken to my own kids this week, they have actually turned around and said, well, we don't have careers advice in school anymore. We have to go to career fairs, which for us, I live in the middle of nowhere, is about a 50 or 60 mile bus ride for half the school. So actually, we need to go into these schools. We need to get it from an education level as well and say, well, this is not just about long days away or long nights away from home. This is saying, well, actually, there's lots of different avenues you can go down, whether it's transport manager or perhaps whether it's in road safety as well. And finally, as I said, changing the culture, actually asking the drivers what they want. And actually by doing that, what we have done is we've surveyed the drivers, not just from a company level, but we've also done it from our clients and the businesses we work for as well. And actually, if we can find out the problem, yeah, thanks for telling us, but actually doing something very importantly about it as well. So this is one of the surveys that we've done. This is taken from the driver survey that we did for this year, so in the spring this year. And we asked the drivers as one of the questions, what attracts you to a driving role? And no surprise, the thing that came up top of the list, and this is taking an average in terms of the answers out of 10, was rates of pay. Well, that probably appeals to most of us, to be honest. But what we've said is, okay, well, we're trying to drive these market forces forward. Rather than drive prices down, is put them up. If drivers want more money, because we want them to be professional, we want them to think of themselves professional, therefore we have to pay accordingly. So what we're doing is paying between perhaps £1, £1.50 per hour more than maybe our competitors or other in the industry to actually push these prices up. And then what we get is not only the drivers in, but we actually get the retention side of things as well, which is very important. By asking our customers and our clients what their drivers want, because drivers, as we said, want to feel very valued. These surveys here, we asked, I think it was 42 drivers, and they were anonymous replies. There was no comeback on the drivers whatsoever in that sense. Actually, how well do you feel valued with your companies? And how well do you feel treated? Not just as us as Pertemps as a recruitment company, but also within the companies you're working for. And obviously, most of the people are saying well or very well, which is great for us. And if those numbers came down when we survey again, then again, we absolutely need to do something about this. It's no just taking the results and then sticking it on a shelf. So does it work finally? Well, yes, it has, because what we found in previous years is we've had a driver shortage. We've struggled to perhaps retain these drivers and fulfill the posts that our clients are desperately needing at these busy times of year. What we did find in 2015 is that we didn't have a driver shortage. We had no problem whatsoever because we were retaining the drivers in the obviously the company itself. We didn't have any delays in booking requests. We fulfilled every single one as and when it came in. And we didn't have any failures to deliver either. So for us, it's been very successful. But particularly, as I said, just to really summarise, it's getting these new drivers in, which is very important. Whatever gender, it doesn't matter, but saying to these young drivers, look, this is a career path, and hopefully giving them something very structured and helping them along the way in what is obviously a very expensive process as well. All right. Thank you very much.